So I wanted to ask you, now that you've had this huge victory in the Gambia, what are your hopes for extending this victory more globally?
Um, for me, when we talk about the issue of FGM, until FGM is no longer practiced in any country in the world, we can't really say we've had any victory. Just because Gambia has banned FGM, recently we found out through UNICEF that 200 million women are currently living with FGM. And I think it's all about responsibility. When we look at countries like India, for instance, they've been the countries that have been left out of this conversation, because mostly when you talk about FGM, people only talk about Africa and people only refer to it as an African problem, but we need to look at it in perspective. FGM is even happening in parts of Colombia. And so to me, it's a global movement. And I'm working with people like Miriam, I'm working with the Bora community to make sure that the good practices we learned in Gambia, like for instance, working with young people, working with religious leaders, how can we take that from the Gambia and move that to these other countries and apply it? Because the concept is the same. All we have to do is to continue finding the right partners, continue empowering women, empowering religious leaders, because everyone has a role in it. We have to look at this from a holistic perspective. We have to tackle the issue holistically. We can't tackle one and forget about one. We can see it as a health issue, look at it as a women's issue, but there's also that religious component of it that we need to look at and address.
Okay, so what about that in terms of the religious component? Here, maybe I'll turn to our special envoy. What can your office do, and what can religious leaders do to address this issue?
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you as well to CFR for hosting this screening discussion. I think the role of religious leaders, as we saw in the film, is critically important, because in many countries where this practice is prevalent, as was mentioned in the film, this is a practice that predates Islam. It's something that is more of a cultural practice that you find in many parts of the world. So, because it's pervaded the culture, and because there are religious justifications which are sometimes made to justify it, religious leaders are extremely influential and important to engage in trying to disentangle this practice from the religious justifications and clarify, what the origins of it are, and what the religions really say about it. So that's been an angle that we've been trying to work on at the State Department. My role is part of a larger Office of Religion and Global Affairs, which was opened by the Secretary 3 years ago. And we work to engage with religious leaders on the broad array of our foreign policy issues, because religion is such an important factor in society. And so, part of the role of the office is to improve the ability of the department to engage with religious leaders, and also to better understand religious dynamics globally. So this is FGMC is one area where we try to partner with religious leaders and with organizations like the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And I'll take this opportunity to acknowledge Amira Ismail, who's with the OIC's mission to the UN, and she's one of our really influential partners in working on issues like this. Amira and the OIC's ambassador to the UN, Ambassador Fulgo partnered with our office to host in February an event at the UN which highlighted the role of religious leaders in seeking to end the practice of FGM. Jaha was there along with a number of other activists and religious leaders. And at that event, we screened a film which included a number of messages from religious leaders, both Muslim and Christian, including from the Coptic Christian community in Egypt, where this is an issue in that community as well, to clarify the fact that, at least from these religious leaders' perspective, the practice has nothing to do with the religion itself. And I think governments and other organizations have an important role to play in highlighting those voices as influential actors in civil society. So not only do we partner with really inspiring activists like Jaha to highlight their efforts to end the practice, we also want to partner with religious leaders who are doing the same thing.
And another issue that that the film really highlights is the role of men and boys. Can you talk a bit more about that and the work that that you've done or you see going forward doing with men and boys?
So when I look at my team of people that I work with, half of them are women and half of them are men. And I think the young men in our team, they do more sometimes than the women do. I remember when I was in Gambia, and the CIA version of the Gambia came and picked us up in our office. There was a young man there called Mohammed, and I told them that I can go by myself. No one needs to come with me if it's going to be anything. This is my issue. It's my problem. But he wouldn't, and he came with me. And it was the most terrifying experience. But him being there, and for instance, even my dad supporting me, like in my community, my whole community turned against me. We were talking about this in the car. A lot of people said a lot of things about me, and it was really, really hurtful. But what gave me strength was knowing that my dad had my back. It didn't matter, how many calls he received. It didn't matter what the world said about me. It's like all he kept telling me was, even though he didn't necessarily agree with what I was doing, but all he kept telling me was, don't give up. If this is what you really wanted to do, when people talk about you, it means that you're somebody. If you were not anyone, and that's one message that always stuck in my head. It's like every time I call my dad, one of the things that he told me was, the fact that people are talking about you means you're someone and you're something. And when they start talking about you, that's when you should worry about yourself. And that in itself. And if every girl had a father like that told them that, me and I always say this, me and my dad, we don't have to agree on every issue. But the fact that he loves me, and the young men in my life, like Said, who I was always on Skype with. Said ended up being exiled from the Gambia. He lives in Norway now. And they're the people, like, when it gets rough, it's them that I go to. And they're the people, they act like bodyguards. When people are trolling me online, I don't have to respond because they are there to take the heat for me. And to me, that's everything. And I don't know how I can do this. I mean, I tell them all the time, they do most of the work and I end up getting credit for it. And if I didn't have them, I don't think I'll be here. If my dad didn't support me, I wouldn't do this. If I didn't have men like Said in my life. I met Patrick a few years ago, making this documentary about me, and now I can say that he's a family to me, and it's like people like him. I can call Patrick in the middle of the night when things get rough and cry. It doesn't matter if you're from Gambia or you understand this issue, but it's that support that really has made this whole thing easy.
Do you see a generational shift with men and boys or with young women?
Absolutely. My dad is a feminist now. And I mean, we were like my baby cousin, she's currently, I feel like she's facing the same issues that I faced when I was 15. She's 19 and going through a lot of pressure because they want her to get married. And I was just telling my dad to try to convince her dad to like talk to her parents, to not put her through that. And we were talking about this, and I'm like, thinking back at when I was 15, this is the same dad that allowed me to go through some of the things that I went through. But now, listening to some of the things, my dad told me I don't need a man. And to me, that was like, are you sure about that? My dad would actually tell me, if you want to leave your husband, you can go ahead and do that. You don't need a man to raise your children. You're a strong woman. You're a beautiful woman. And you can get whoever you want. It's changing. Like, change is happening. And it's not just my dad. It's like people like Imam Fati. We've completely silenced him. He's like the toughest guy in the country. Everyone is afraid of Imam Fati. This is a guy, when he used to hear women talk about FGM in the radio, he'll literally take his car, go to the radio station, insult them, say really negative things about them. But right now he can't touch us, and that shows the power of using our own voices and standing in our truth and not moving from that. And yeah.
Were you surprised when you said it wasn't compulsory after all?
I was scared going there. I didn't think because I've heard a lot of things, and I know about his experience. But when I heard him say that, and you guys didn't see all the backstory, but that was the only reason I went there. I knew that me and Imam Fati wouldn't agree on everything, but the only reason I wanted to see him was I knew that I would get that out of him. And it's this funny way of that I think, and a lot of people don't understand why, but it's like, if I put my mind on something and I have a clear goal of what I want out of that, it doesn't matter what you say to me, I always know how to just stay calm and just listen to whatever nonsense you have to say, as long as I know what I'm trying to get out of that conversation. And it was the same thing with the Gambian government officials, even with our president. I remember telling Patrick when I wanted to go to Gambia, like, I just need 1 minute with the president. If I can get that, I know that he will ban FGM. I just need a moment with him. And as soon as I get that, I can do that, and it happened.
And let me ask you, because the film also explores the role of the US government and the Obama administration, how useful is it for a country like the US to, or a government like the US to speak out on these issues? And I want to ask you this too, in terms of, is there a backlash where leaders in other countries will say, well, that's just Western imperialism? So first, from your perspective, how do you deal with that potential backlash and anticipate that?
I think the way to mitigate that is to really partner with organizations like the OIC, with religious leaders, with activists who are from the communities where these practices are prevalent, to highlight their voices and to show that this isn't something that's just coming from Western countries. These are views that are held across the world. And I think that helps to respond to that. But also it's important for the US government to speak out on these issues because we have a principled position on this practice, and it's something that affects women and girls in the United States. There are people who live here and who've undergone the practice, and in fact there are many girls who are at risk of being taken to their home countries to have this practice forced upon them, or even in the United States itself. So it's important for us as a government to clearly state our position on it, and also to enforce the laws that we have in place now. Thanks to women and activists like Jaha, we have laws in place that also criminalize the taking of girls outside of the country to have the practice enforced upon. So I think it's a matter of being clear in our principled stand, but also working with others to show that this is something that's universal.
And what about from your standpoint, the role that the U.S. government can play? How helpful is that in terms of influencing other campaigns abroad?
So when Obama first spoke about this issue, I felt like it made the issue cool again, and other African leaders, because Obama said something, they wanted to do something about it. And these issues, everything that happens has a ripple effect. And when you look at the people back home and us here, we are so connected. If we can end it here, they can end it there, they can end it, it's vice versa, and we have to continue working. FGM is not just an African issue. There's a lot of diaspora communities that still hold this practice very, very dear. And even now, a lot of communities don't agree with what I'm doing. And we have to change those mindsets. And the US government, as the leader of the free world, they need to have a strong position on this. They need to show that this isn't something that they want to see an end to. It's a global issue, it's a health issue. When you have 200 million women currently living with a practice, and you have a country like the United States not saying or not doing anything, it's not right. And that's why I feel like they need to, even now, I feel like we're not doing enough as a country. I'm a US citizen, I'm Gambian, but I'm also a US citizen. And as a country, I feel like we can do a lot more when it comes to FGM.
I want to bring others in, but let me just maybe ask both of you a final question as other people are thinking about what they want to ask. Is just, what impact did the banning of FGM in Gambia have on neighboring countries, and how can you use that step as a way of extending it? Do leaders look at each other and what's happening, and does it have an influence that way? Or are you linked up with activists in other countries that you're working with to help support their campaigns?
So right now I have, for instance, on my phone, I have WhatsApp groups in Sierra Leone, I have WhatsApp groups in Nigeria, I have, and even in Senegal, I'm constantly getting calls from people that want to start something like this. Even with the Religious Leaders Conference that we had in Gambia, it was so popular. I'm still getting calls and emails from neighboring countries like Mali and Guinea-Conakry, where people are asking, how can we involve their religious leaders when we have a conference like that, or how can we bring what we did in the Gambia to their country? But the good part about what we do at Safe Hands is we literally write every single thing that was said at that conference. Like, we'll have 40 to 50 pages on a report that will tell you how we started it, what happened, what was said, who said what. So we just pass on our reports, and we share a lot of information. Everything we do is very, very transparent. I mean, I don't mind, my mother's from Sierra Leone, and I do want to go to Sierra Leone. to do some work there. I do want to do a lot of work in the West African region, even in India, for instance. I feel like we need to push for a global ban in all these countries, in Indonesia. And as long as there's FGM, I'll always work on this issue. It has become more than just passion for me. I mean, it's a reality that we can end it. It's not just, at first it was just like, she's very, very crazy. I mean, that's what people say. No one understands like how I even think all of these things are possible, but a lot of the crazy things that I've said have actually happened. And I feel like we can end FGM in our generation. It's not going to save us that long. We just need that partnership, we need that support, and for everyone to believe in what I believe, that we can end this.
Special Envoy Suleman, how do you